Hi, everybody. I'm Nina Bosky, and welcome to this very special edition of Marilyn Behind the Icon. Do I have a very special guest with you? She's one of my favorite people. She is a lifestyle astrologer. She speaks to millions of people every single month via her website, Astrology Zone. We're so excited to have her today talking about all things Marilyn. Welcome, Susan. Nice to have you.
Oh, I'm thrilled that you invited me. Thank you. And then what a great topic.
Oh, it's a fun topic. And I love your outfit and your background. It's so Marilyn. So it's so great.
It's my office.
Well, that's even better. So, we'll get right into it because we have a lot to cover here with Marilyn as we celebrate her life and her passing, as it is the anniversary of her death that we are talking today. And one of the things I want to talk to you about, she in the first episode or the first season of Marilyn Behind the Icon, we profile her childhood in depth, and people really get to understand the challenges that she had in her childhood.
Everybody has Saturn, the lessons we learn in life. Saturn makes us deal with the here and now, the earthly experience. And and Saturn was in her house of home. Oh. Saturn is sorrow. Saturn always makes you feel you need more, that you don't have enough. Like some people have it in the house of money and they're millionaires, but they're always afraid they're going to lose it all. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's rational always, but in this case, it was rational. I mean, she really had a hard time, but she was able to, to get beyond it because Saturn was in very good aspect to Mars, the planet of action, and Uranus, the planet of unusual thinking, and to, Uranus is surprise and thinking outside the box. And she had good aspects to Saturn, but it was Saturn and the moon. The moon is mother, and the domestic situation, it just was hard. Yeah. So she wasn't imagining it. It wasn't something she could have fixed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was her cross to bear. We all have one or two, and it was in Scorpio at the very bottom of her chart. She's a Gemini with Leo rising. Now, the funny, wonderful thing about Gemini is they always seem younger than their years. Now, if you have a listener listening in, she's, I got Gemini rising. Same thing. You're always going to look younger than you are. And people will always guess 10 or 15 or 20 years younger than you are. Gemini has this curiosity about the world. They read a lot. They absorb what they're reading. Some people read things and then don't follow up. You could read about all the new technology in skincare, for example, but if you don't use what you're reading, it doesn't help you.
Yeah.
But Gemini absorbs it right in.
Oh, it's really interesting you say that, Susan, because she was a ferocious reader, and she would read very, big books, a lot of pages, and not your fluffy stuff either. I mean, she went under the hood to delve deep into these topics. She was definitely, most people don't realize how bright she was, and certainly read quite a bit and had
Gemini, Aquarius, Libra, the air signs, they're considered the intellectual signs. They are. And she had the sun, giver of life and strength. We always look, where is the sun in a chart? In the 10th house of honors, awards, achievement, fame. People who have that tend to rise like cream to the top. Now, she had Leo rising. And I want to define the term because people say, what is that? The rising sign is the sign that's prominent on Earth's horizon in the east as the sun is coming up. And that is Leo for her. And, I have people come to me, can I be an actress? Can I be an actor? Well, if you don't have some prominent Leo, maybe we should think of another job for you. But she had it. She had it in spades. And she had Neptune on the ascendant. Now, Neptune can be a double-edged sword. First of all, Neptune rules Pisces, so it's a soft, romantic sign. Neptune rules the fantasy, the silver screen, imagination, glamour, stardust, unconditional love. She was capable of that.
So though, too, early on, she was fantasizing and visualizing her future. And
really?
Allowed her to move from her very challenging roots to really having the resilience to overcome those challenges that you're talking about.
A dramatic change. Well, see, Neptune would give her real talent for the film. The only problem is sometimes, and not everybody who has Neptune on the horizon, some people are drawn to liquor, drugs, to mood altering states, because that's Neptune. Neptune also rules not only the sea, but also the fog. That candy cotton fog we see in San Francisco, that's so beautiful. Yeah. Neptune rules that. But it's also the fog that you're on a highway and you're freaking out because where did this come from? And I can't see the car in front of me.
Yeah.
So, and it was opposition her moon. Mm-hmm. Her mother was very confused because it's opposition. And opposition either completes like two halves of an apple coming together, or it's more of a tug of war. Her mother had trouble with reality. Yeah. I think her mother was unhappy.
And mentally ill. She was also mentally ill and she was institutionalized. I don't know if you know that. So
I didn't know that. I don't know a lot about Marilyn, obviously. But
you do through her chart. So I'm filling in some of it. It's really interesting that you shared that.
Because,
her mother, I think, had good intentions of wanting to, but just could not fulfill that as in regards to being stable for Marilyn at all, So,
I just did the co-hosting on Turner Classic Movies. Mm-hmm. And when we did Air Signs, we did Marilyn Monroe with the Prince and the Showgirl.
Okay.
And I read, of course, before I went on, I was talking about her chart, but I also wanted to know a little something. So I looked at Wikipedia and they said, she was always late on set. On this, she didn't even want to do this movie. She had to do the movie to get out of her contract to go to another studio. Actually, I think she did a great job. She looked stunning, and she was very good in it. But
and it was her production company that actually.
Oh, really? Was it? Yeah. See, smart, taking control. But there was another account of why she was always late. She was a perfectionist. She was learning the lines, and she was using every minute before getting on set, which always made her a little bit late because she wanted to do it another time and another time and another time. So she was careful. And this part of her doesn't come across, but she was definitely a perfectionist. Mm-hmm. And she had Saturn.
Very dedicated to her craft. Most people don't realize what a hard worker she would be in terms of really studying, dancing and singing and all the things that you're supposed to do, particularly in the studio system of that time and that era. She'd get up early and she'd be there practicing. And most people think that the Marilyn Monroe character is her. And that's actually a preconceived, that's not at all in terms of her personality, except for she did it so well that people thought that that's actually who she was. And that,
Well, one thing I learned, because I was required to look at all 12 movies before we talked about them each week in July. We did a festival of astrology and we were talking about the stars. I noticed that in order to get the billing of the star, you were expected to dance and sing. Mm-hmm. Not just to act. Yeah. That's asking a lot.
Especially nowadays when you think about so many stars that just act or they sing and they don't do both. There's some that definitely do that.
But I mean,
they would.
And also, during the times, she grew up in the Depression, kind of, right?
Yep.
Wasn't the Depression 1929? She was very little. She was only
very little, and also very
pretty.
Yeah, and a lot of times, without food and without proper, care, really and truly, and abused and sexually abused on top of that. So when you think about her
From her family?
Not so much from her family, but from some of the people that she was staying with
around. Yeah.
And so when you and very vulnerable, and I think there was even Clark Gable at the time. She'd look up to him and looked. Her dad looked a little similar to her real biological dad, looked a little bit like Clark Gable, and so she would fantasize that Clark Gable was her father back in the day. So you think about that yearning for daddy, and one of the other questions I wanted to ask you in relations to hers. One of the things that Marilyn deeply wanted was her own family, and she never had children. Does her chart speak to that at all in regards to family and love?
We look at the position of Saturn, because that's where you might have a part of your body that's less strong or needs some medical attention. She had it in Scorpio, the reproductive organs.
Oh, wow.
And so that's what Scorpio rules. And that's maybe she had some scar tissue or something that prevented children.
She had a very difficult time in that area in terms of her scar tissue and challenges with getting pregnant and staying pregnant.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Do you know that's my number one question from readers? Can I have a baby?
Wow.
Because women now have education, and they get good jobs, and then they forget, wait a minute, I'm supposed to have a baby when I'm not too old. I would say anyone listening who's young, freeze your eggs. The younger the eggs, the better they are. If you're about 25, it doesn't cost that much. It certainly doesn't hurt. You do have to pay rent on them every year. Your parents will help you. They want grandchildren.
Yeah.
So, but don't wait too long, because childbearing, is for an early age. I had both my children by the time I was 30, because I have a bad leg and I bleed internally. I mean, I've been in hospitals my whole life. I've had 40 blood transfusions. I had to have them quickly, or else the doctors would say, they would find any excuse to tell a woman not to have children. I knew that because I was dealing with doctors since I was a baby, and they're horrible sometimes. They don't have any heart for you. They just kind of say things. So I had my children before they knew how dangerous it was for me to have them.
Well,
after Chrissy was born, I was in the hospital a month, and that freaked them out, with transfusions. But I said, I'm coming back for another one, and I did.
You did. Well, hey, that's before they told they gave you all the warning signs. So
they locked the door, and then they threaten you, and they say, we're not going to work with you. So
oh, wow.
You do need a doctor to have a baby.
Yeah, you sure do. So, and Marilyn did get pregnant, and she did miscarry with Arthur Miller.
She did?
Yeah, she did.
Once or more than once?
And, I that's a good question. I think she might have been pregnant twice, and that would be a great question for Gary Vitaco-Robles to confirm or deny. But I do know that about when she was actually filming Some Like It Hot, not the last film that she did.
Oh.
15 she went into a miscarriage, and that was very devastating for Marilyn, and that was kind of the unraveling of her marriage as well. And
who was she married to at that time?
Arthur Miller at the time.
Arthur Miller.
Yeah,
he was so disappointed, huh?
Well, I think she certainly was, and I think in terms of Arthur Miller, their marriage, they were married for about 5 years, and that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, because with the Marilyn fans, not so much with her first marriage with Jim, who was she got married at 16. I think that was
really
in all fairness, more of a arranged marriage for Marilyn, because she wasn't going to have actually a stable home life, and so the people that she was staying with were like, okay, if we marry her off, then she will have a stable.
Oh.
Right. But Joe DiMaggio and Arthur Miller, that's a interesting debate there between the two. What would you say in regards to those two gentlemen? Joe DiMaggio, November 25th is his birth date, and then Arthur Miller was October 17th. And those two men, I know she loved them for different reasons, but does anything speak to...
Well, she picked good ones. She picked good ones. Arthur Miller was a Libra, and Libra and Gemini go together like, cup and saucer, salt and pepper. I mean, beautifully. She was looking for intellect, but her Venus up here on the top, and of course, Venus is the most highly elevated planet in the chart. So she was beautiful and loved. See, it's the highest planet up by where the 12 would be on a clock. We call that the most highly elevated planet. That planet rinses the whole chart with luck. But it's in Aries. Aries is the athlete or the military leader. One or the other. So Joe DiMaggio was an athlete.
Oh, yes.
He was very good for her.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And see, she had Jupiter in the house of marriage. Jupiter gives you many chances, as many as you want. Jupiter expands everything it touches, so it's in the house of marriage. But this also includes her agent. Did she have a good agent?
Well, she had a very special, she did, but she had a very special bond to an agent, Johnny Hyde, earlier in her career that really, without him, she probably wouldn't have been Marilyn Monroe.
Because I would have said, listen to your agent. If you have Jupiter there, you make fantastic alliances that are good for you. And those people bring you closer to your dreams. Now, she had Jupiter and the moon in Aquarius. The moon is the fine tuning to your character, the part of you that people don't see until they start to know you well, and here Aquarius is gregarious and of the people, but in a democratic way, not in an egalitarian kind of way where I'm royalty and you're my subjects. It's not like that at all. Much more I'm equal to you kind of attitude,
Well, and I think that's also what spoke to a lot of people in terms of relatability. But one of the things in one of her quotes, she talks about really belonging to the world, not belonging to anybody, but to the world. And I thought,
that's so funny. You should say that because we say that about Aquarius.
Interesting.
Who's a famous Aquarius is Oprah.
Oh, yeah.
She didn't belong to one man. I don't know what that relationship is like. It doesn't look passionate. I don't know. I'm not sure though. There might be.
Yeah, you never know.
Usually, if you're dating an Aquarian, they belong to the world. Also, if you have some Aquarius, and she had two major planets in Aquarius, Aquarius can look normal if you're looking at them walking down the street. But when they go under the lights, oh my gosh, something happens with Aquarius. They become electrified. They're fantastic in the media.
Well,
they're born for that.
If you think about Marilyn Monroe, right? The minute, and you talked about Prince and the Showgirl, right? The minute she came on screen, she has it. There's certain people.
And that dress.
Oh my God.
That dress.
Yeah. So I mean,
that's perfect for her. And it just. And she had short hair in that. I always thought of Marilyn with longer hair, but she wore it short many times, and she certainly made it look sexy. Those were the days when the studios had a lot of control over you. Yeah. You didn't have actresses saying that they went to rehab or anything like that. In many ways, I think it was more glamorous when the studios had more control. But
now it's the real look. You've got your stars on Instagram.
Yeah, more. Yeah, it's more real.
That is with all the buffers and the filters that people have now. But the impromptu network right on your phone, right? Talking about people.
Thinking about her, the moon is connected to reproduction too, and babies. And she had an Aquarius. If she were born now, she could have done in vitro.
Oh.
New technology would have helped her.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in 1926, I mean, they didn't know anything about this. They didn't even dream it was possible.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
just wondering why she didn't adopt children, having been adopted herself.
She would have. She was very much into children, civil rights, human rights, animal rights, right? She was a huge...
that's all the Aquarius. Aquarius wants to leave the world a better place. Yeah. And they usually volunteer, and either in politics or charities, like Save the
she was interested in politics as well. And she was very, I told you, a ferocious, kind of
leader. Yeah.
But she was also metaphysical. And when I mean metaphysical, she was deeper than most people think. They think of her as the ditzy blonde that goes across the screen. But some of the books that she read, some of the things and the conversations she would have with people would be much deeper. And if you look at some of her poems, sometimes very dark, but also very poetic and deep, So
she had Mars in Pisces, very close to Uranus, but let's look at Mars. Mars is your aggression, but when it's in Pisces, it's hidden. It can be just as strong, but it's subtle.
Wow.
She wanted to do well, and she was thinking a lot about life. Now, Princess Diana had something like this, so did JFK. This is kind of violent. These two, Mars is the warrior.
Yeah.
And Uranus can be electrical explosions and surprise. And, I don't like these two planets together. Yeah. And it's in the house of death. Now, death is also taxes. She could have had trouble with that instead, taxes, inheritances, other people's money.
A lot of money, originally really interesting. She just bought her first house. Joe DiMaggio gave her the down payment for her house.
Oh gosh.
She a lot of times would take some of her wardrobe and utilize it. She was very simplistic and very simple. She wasn't the glamorous movie star. So that's why I said there's a lot of dichotomy and
that's the depression overlaying. Like this is a beautiful dress, we should use it again, that kind of thinking. And the Aquarian, there's no need to spend a lot of money. We can, Aquarius wonders why you take them to expensive restaurants when you could go to an organic place down the block and enjoy it just as much. I don't know. I mean, I like to go to a nice place once in a while, but Aquarius, they could eat off a food truck and they're happy. She had the moon there, but she did have Leo rising, so she went both ways. Well, she enjoyed the glamour too.
So let's talk about that, because a lot of people think of her as an extrovert, but she really, in a lot of ways, liked her solitude, not just in the depression aspect of it, but she was very simplistic. So she had these two sides, and sometimes people have a hard time kind of summing her up. What would you say based on her?
She had 3 water planets out of a possible 10, and there's 8 planets. We always include Pluto, and that's where she has Cancer. But we also include the sun and moon. They're not planets, but just we'll say that there are 10 planets, but there's really 8 planets plus the sun and moon. But 3 out of the 10 are in water, and water is emotional, reflective, intuitive.
Yeah, very
probing. And she had it in the 8th house, is not only the house of death, but mystery. And Scorpio's natural house. And actually she has four water planets. 4.
Wow.
4 planets out of 8.
Wow.
Water likes to be alone. Gemini likes to be with people. The way they deflect stress is to talk. And what turns them on with a romantic relationship is talking and admiring the partner, his mastery or her mastery over their chosen profession.
Very intellectual men, loved powerful men, and mainly for their intellect and their ability to keep that conversation alive as well. So I think you're right on when you talk about her chart.
Do we know anything about her father? Like, well, she never got to know him, did she?
No, she didn't. He was actually, it was like a farm that he had. I was going to say a dairy farm out in San Bernardino out here in California. And she went to actually go visit him. And in one of our episodes, we talk about that. And he did not.
Well, he was prominent in the community. He was respected.
Yeah,
but he ran away from his family.
Yeah, well, he went and he started a new family, and back in those days,
oh my gosh, he married again and everything.
Yeah, well, he didn't marry Marilyn Monroe's mother, and so it was kind of like who is the father? And when she did find out, she did want to get to know him and was hoping, at that point she was Marilyn Monroe, so she thought, of course, she's going to want to get to know her, and it was very disappointing for her, because I think that. Just like any child, you want to be loved, right? And
definitely. And you want your father to say, "Thank God you found me."
Yeah, and the exact opposite, which kind of sets up this pattern of men, wanting Marilyn Monroe and realizing that the everyday person wasn't that person. So, she has a lifelong pattern of that abandonment issue. Does that show in her chart at all as well?
Well, the Saturn, the lessons we learn in life, the sorrows we feel, is in the house of home. And so rejection would come under that. That's so tragic.
Yeah, she's always been searching for that her whole entire life, and really.
And she was the ultimate trophy girl. If a man said, "I'm dating Marilyn," oh my gosh, I mean.
Yeah, the problem is that she created this character that really wasn't her. And so it always, she was always eluding that love then, because did they love Marilyn Monroe or did they really love her? And I think as she got, and
that's a good question. I think a lot of very pretty girls have that question.
Yeah.
I think, if they're models or, actresses or, why do you love me? Is it the image or is it really me?
Yeah, and I think and I think that's why sometimes people can really relate to her, because she talked about those types of subjects back in the 1950s when nobody was talking about child abuse. Nobody was talking about the kind of trauma that she had, and she spoke openly about it, and she wasn't trying to create this image up here. And I think that's where people can relate to it. If I've had, my own issues with abandonment, and if I've had my own issues with, some type of physical or sexual trauma, she really relates to a lot of people that have that sense of loneliness. And I think that's really important today, because we're living, Susan, we're living in a society of, the next big influencer. And the reality is that,
oh gosh,
it's just not.
I thought that Instagram would change during the pandemic and become deeper and more reflective, but it didn't. It didn't.
And so let's I have a few more questions as it relates to Marilyn, and we're
sure.
Looking at her death and looking at the passing of her death, and there's a lot of controversy around her death. But if you look back in August 4th, 5th, depending on when you think she passed, was that in her chart that could have been a possibility? I know you can't predict death per se.
Well, I thought, and I did the date of her death. I think it was a complete accident.
Okay.
Where was Saturn? Saturn was in Aquarius, very close to her moon. She was sad. She could have been depressed at that time, but I don't think she wanted to die. I think she had a lot of things coming up that she was looking forward to. And I think it was an accident, an overdose.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting you should say that, because I think the key here is, regardless of what happened to her that night, just like Michael Jackson, some of these high profile celebrities, she had a very difficult time sleeping. She had mental illness, wasn't being treated properly back then in 1962. They didn't have the some of the knowledge that they have today. So part of her symptoms, based on how they were treating her, were just actually making the issue more worse. Not being and having what they call mixed episodes, that's certainly a high probability. And her doctors today would probably be brought up on charges, if not being looked into more closely.
Oh, wow.
For a lot
She
of
didn't live with anybody, not even a housekeeper, huh? Because it sounds like they didn't pay her a whole lot, you know.
well, they did. She did have a housekeeper, and her housekeeper was with her. And that's a whole other story that we don't need to get into. But her, you know, I think there's a lot of people that, in regards to her death, wonder. Eunice Murray was asked, that was her housekeeper, to go ahead and check on Marilyn, and she saw the light underneath the door, but she never checked on her. So, you know, we've been talking about the celebrity of today, and, you know, you got Michael Jackson, some of these, you know, big celebrities that, you know, died in some ways too young. But what do you say to that in regards to her chart? You know, you said, hey, it may be an accident based on what you're looking at right now. But, you know, in regards to her chart, you know, we've had very famous people that have died of overdoses, let alone mental.
Definitely, I think it was drugs or alcohol with Neptune rising. But she had a violent eighth house, which and Mars conjunct Uranus.
Yeah, and what do you mean by violent eighth house? What does that mean too?
Eighth house can be terrible problems with money and taxes, but it also can bring injury, surgery, or even death in some cases. And she had a chart just like Princess Diana, who had a premonition about all this, and JFK.
Oh, wow.
And she had a chart like them. But nothing is destined in a chart. If I was her mother and I was doing her chart, I would have said, you always have to be careful and not do reckless sports like bungee jumping, you know. I would just say be conservative. And with the Neptune rising, I think she needed help. You know, everybody reduces stress in a different way. Some people have a lot of sex, which, like some of our presidents have had, or some shop too much, some gamble. Ben Affleck lost his marriage because he was gambling a lot. Yeah, and I think he stopped all that. And
addiction. He had addiction issues as well. You know, so
yeah, and many people go for drugs just to be in an altered state to get out of the pain, and they self-medicate. I think if she would have had a really good psychiatrist, he could have, or she could have given insights and that aha moment that changes your perspective. Yeah. And, you know, considering her very unhappy childhood, she needed someone she could trust. And it looked to me from the outside, but you're the expert, it looked like people around her, many of them, not Joe DiMaggio, but most of them, maybe not Arthur Miller either, but wanted something from her. Yeah. Yeah. And she needed something back and wasn't getting it. I don't see her with a lot of girlfriends, did she? And you know, Aquarius likes to stay apart, but they usually have many friends, but very few get into the inner circle. And she has that moon in Aquarius.
Yeah, you know, that very speaks to a lot of, you know, her very close people around her, particularly around her death, were professional people, not necessarily her close.
She needed a girlfriend, you know?
Yeah, that was
her call up and just talk to and say, what do you think? This is what my boss said to me today, you know, and have somebody who's sympathetic and is always on your side, your best friend, you know, and I don't think she had that.
No, she didn't have that. And you know, she really didn't have a lot of people that she could trust. And when you think about that kind of celebrity, I think most celebrities probably feel this way. What do you really love me for, right? And so I think it becomes the entrapment of celebrity. You want to be celebrity, you want to be loved and adored, and then once you are, it doesn't necessarily feel real or you know, more solid. And she certainly had a fragmented childhood and upbringing, and certainly love eluded her. Is there anything, Susan, that we haven't talked about today that you found out about her?
Know, she was Gemini. And Gemini is always eternally young, even in old age. If you know any Geminis, they always look younger than their years. And she kept that sweet, innocent part of her that was real. That idealistic side that Mars and Uranus was giving her in Pisces, that there is a better life. And, you know, that sweetness she had. People who try to be Marilyn often lack that essential quality that she had, that glamorous, she was almost untouchable. She was such an icon. You know, she was like pixie dust was falling all over her. And Gemini is tied to the myth of Pan. And, you know, Peter Pan.
Oh, Peter Pan. Yeah, Peter Pan. Oh, that Pan.
Greek ideal of Pan. And her ruler is Mercury. And Mercury was in Gemini too, very close to the sun. That gave her intellect and the ability to speak well and to remember her lines and so forth. But that lovely young quality would always have stayed with her. You know, my mom was a Gemini, and she would always surprise me. This is somebody who could watch Meet the Press, CNN, and all the most intellectual shows. And then when I'm there writing Astrology Zone on my computer, she's saying, go get some cherries and let's watch Channel 20. And I'm like, Mom, that's MTV. I don't think you'll like Channel 20. And she can't hear me because her hearing aids are turned off. She says, we're going to watch Surfer Girls, but you already missed Surfer Boys. And the scenery in Hawaii is so beautiful. And Brittany looks just like her grandchild, Diana, my child. So we have to watch this show. See, Gemini can find something great in almost anything. Wow. They're the ultimate reporter. You know, you're the bureau chief. You send a Gemini out on a story, even if it's a topic they don't really know about or care about. Yeah. They'll come back excited. They have that enthusiasm that is so lovely about Gemini.
She's certainly, you know, you think about the legacy of being able to be internally young. And if you think about it, here we are, you know, almost 60 years later, literally keeping that 36-year-old or younger version of Marilyn Monroe alive in our hearts. So, you know, in terms of Marilyn, I think this has been a wonderful segment with you. But, you know, for most of us that are living in, you know, 2020, 2021 and going into 2022, this has not exactly been the easiest. So let's talk a little bit, because you're very famous about your year ahead, and we are smack in the middle of 2021.
Well,
what's going on here? Are we going to get better light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, yeah. I mean, every day we take baby steps toward the end of this pandemic, but it's not going to be over until Saturn leaves Aquarius, because Saturn is the lessons we learn in life, and he wants us to walk the chalk line. And people who don't read verified sources, you know, their best newspaper in their city, and only are reading Facebook, they're not getting verified information. We're going to be stuck with this pandemic until March 2023. We got another year.
Whoa. Okay. Another year. Let's talk a little bit about 2021 here. Do you see anything coming to light and any bridging between, there's a lot of divide, you know, I'm not even talking just political divide.
No, but the divide's going to keep up. You know why? This is a serious problem, and it's going to take years to fix. Pluto is back, almost, not quite, back to where he was when we had the American Revolution. And
oh, wow.
It was pretty serious then. It will be back in about 2-3 years. But then we have to wait, and Pluto takes 248 years to go around the sun. We're only, I think, 245 years old, aren't we? We have to do 1776 and subtract it from 2021. Ooh. So we have a little ways to go before Pluto makes an exact return to the place he was on the American Revolution. But since he takes so long to go around the sun, I have a friend who's a in his 80s, and he's quite a renowned astrologer, and he's written many books. And we have lunch because he lives in my neighborhood. So every once in a while I call Bob up and we just talk aspects. He thinks it could go another 8 years of this divide. Wow. I don't think it would be that long, but this is terrifying, because I don't mind if someone has another view. You know, that's what makes the world go round. But it can't be make-believe. It has to be a real stance, not something somebody made up.
Yeah, I really do think that I think one of the things that I'd love to do in this segment is give people some hope as well.
Oh yeah, no, next year is a much better year. I didn't want to write the year ahead in 2021. And my editor got so mad at me in Spain. She said, you can't write for us anymore. I said, no, 21 is going to be just like 20, only a teeny bit better, but it's going to, we're going to be isolated, and we're going to be dealing with this for a while. And she didn't believe me. I just didn't want to write about it, so I didn't. I do write my calendar. Okay. And now they're on sale for $9.95. They usually sell for $26.99.
I love it.
So, and people, get all my advice.
Oh, that's great.
I love August. She's so sexy.
Can they get this on your
right on my homepage, your Astrology Zone?
Yeah. So
by the way, while I'm thinking about it, everyone listening can get the free version of my app. There's no reason why you shouldn't. I just won the Media Excellence Awards in Los Angeles for compelling content. And it's free. Now the full name is Daily Horoscope Astrology Zone Plus More by Susan Miller. But don't do that. Just put in Susan Miller. I come up first. But then there's somebody above me who's trying to confuse you when you come up in the Apple or Google Play. So I'm wearing a white blouse. We had to put my picture on the screen so you would know it's my app, So just put in Susan Miller, download it. It's free. We do have a paid version. You don't need it. Read the monthly. The monthly is what put me on the map, and I just celebrated 25 years, so.
Well, you and I go back a few years. We certainly have been in some monumental times. 9/11 was one of them, and here we are in the middle of a pandemic. So there is hope in 2020.
Well, next year, I love next year. Something's happening next year that will never happen again in our lifetime. The meeting of Neptune and Jupiter.
Wow.
In Pisces, which is, now they'll meet again in our lifetime, but they won't be in Pisces. And Pisces is the sign of creativity and artistic expression. It will happen on April 12th.
I was going to say 11th.
It will only happen once.
April 11th is my birthday, so I was like, oh, right.
Oh, well, you're going to feel this strongly, and you're working on a movie, girlfriend.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's so good for you. That meeting of Neptune and Jupiter will set the template for the decade. It will be a renaissance of the arts, just like we had when people could go out again and see each other and hug and kiss and shake hands. I'm going to shake hands.
20s again. I love it. That is so fantastic.
And the arts, it's going to be expressed through art. Art, music, food, fashion, all the disciplines of art. And next year's a happy year. However, if you're in business and you want to come out with a new product, here's what I have to say. You have to do it in the summer. You can't wait until the fall. Every company comes out with new products for the anticipation of holiday shopping. Mm-hmm. Mars goes retrograde. And it's going to be retrograde for a long time, from October 30th through March, the end of March. Wow. So you have to, it may be, actually, no, it'll go direct. It will go direct in January, middle of January, but it'll stay in Gemini until the end of March.
So this
This is
2022, right? This is what you're talking
Yes.
about. Okay,
You
got it.
don't want to launch a product with Mars retrograde. Mars is the warrior. Mars is the one that teaches you to compete and to be the best. That's why, seeing this coming, I redid my app, which is like buying a house in the Hamptons.
Yeah.
It's a commitment, we'll put it that way. And I did it all through the pandemic.
Wow.
With the team in Santa Monica. I'm the app developer, but I hire my team. And now I'm coming out with a second app. It's not going to interfere with the first app at all. It will add to your life.
Oh, wow.
And that's coming out in about a month, but I can't talk about it yet. So you and I are going to have to get together again.
No, we will. Well, you know what?
I have so many things. You see, also, there was a grand conjunction. I don't know if you remember, but on December 20th, right around Christmas last year, Saturn and Jupiter met.
Yes.
And we couldn't see it here in New York. I live in Manhattan. It was a cloud cover. But all my friends in LA sent me photos. And, you know, when you make it a little bigger on the screen,
Yeah.
I could actually see the rings of Saturn. They were so close to Earth. They were unusually close. And that happens every 20 years, only once. When you get a rare aspect that's meeting only once, it changes everything.
So what's going to happen to this then? What changes?
Well, all right. Every time they've met in the past 200 years, they've always met in an Earth sign, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. And they never went out of order. You know, Taurus would come in the year 2000, and then, 2020, they broke the connection. For the first time, they're not going to meet in Earth anymore. And our whole lives, they've met in Earth.
Wow.
And Earth is consumerism. You see it on Instagram. Here's my designer bag, or, here's my new dress, whatever. Now that won't matter as much. They met in Aquarius. And next time they meet, it will be Libra and then Gemini, and they're never going to meet in Earth again. So we're walking over a rickety bridge to a new society that will be digital and intellectual. It's not what you have that matters. That's Earth. Earth is what you could touch. Air signs like Marilyn Monroe, like James Dean, like Oprah, Aquarius, who's a famous Libra. I'll think of someone. But it's intellect that will matter. What do you know and what can you contribute? And Aquarius likes to work in groups. And look how we developed this vaccine so quickly, because people worked in groups. Pfizer worked with companies in England and in Denmark, and everybody, there was an urgency to come up with a solution. So, and the CEO of Pfizer said something very Aquarian. He said, look what can be achieved when no one cares who gets the credit. That's so Aquarian.
Yeah,
let's just focus on the job at hand. Let's get it done through technology.
I hope, it's my hope in 2022 and beyond, that we start to come together as people.
Well, I think we will. You know what else? When you have an Earth predominance, it's the king or the president that tells you what to do. When you have Aquarius, it's grassroots. The people tell you what they want.
Yeah.
And last year, Saturn went into Aquarius for a short time, from March 20th to July 28th. And that's when we had Black Lives Matter. And there was an eclipse right on George Floyd's funeral. When there's an eclipse, that's important. Actually, Marilyn died within 3 days of an eclipse, July 31st. She died on August 3rd or 4th, depending on which coroner you're believing. That was the eclipse. When you have an eclipse, sometimes someone famous is eclipsed out of your life, okay? And, people thought, the people are marching, Black Lives Matter, but then it'll just go away in the news cycle. No, not when it happens on an eclipse. That's an important movement. And because we had the conjunction in Aquarius, grassroots, the people will tell the government what they need. They'll have a stronger voice, and the government will have to listen.
It's interesting you say that, because our season 2 opener is it's called Soul Sisters. It's the relationship between Ella Fitzgerald and Marilyn Monroe, and we have a wonderful actress that plays Marilyn Monroe, Erin Gavin, but we also have a new actress. She's not a new actress, but she's an actress, performer, and jazz singer. Her name is Monique DeBose, and she has a wonderful music video that talks about the rally call and a lot about this issue, because Marilyn was very heavily involved in civil rights. We've got a civil rights happening today, and you mean today's age of looking forth and looking at human rights. And you know, it's a huge time in the world, and I have a feeling, Susan Miller, you and I will be back again. It seems
definitely
about, you know, big things and big events, and it's not going to be 20 years later that we'll be talking. You know,
the only thing similar is the marching of the women in the 60s when they were burning their bras and they got the pill, and things changed dramatically, and especially around 1968. But we're having something similar now. And I think a lot of people didn't know, I didn't, how much Black people suffered quietly without voicing it. And I have some Black friends that now I feel comfortable saying, how do you feel right now? Talk to me. I want to know what you're thinking. And I used to be afraid of offending someone, you know. Now you don't have to be afraid of that. They want you to bring the subject up, and some lively, interesting discussions come up, and we all have to be educated. It's their turn now, and they can contribute so much. So much. We're seeing it, you know, on TV. You know, we're seeing it everywhere. I think, and we'll be better for this. We'll be better for it after it's instituted and settled. You know, and
wonderful saying that says we are spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around.
Oh yeah.
if we realize that, you know what, it's just the skin color, and it's not, you know, there's a lot of different versions of all the way to the, you know, extreme right to the extreme dark, and you know, there's everything in between. And if we could remember that we're all human, I think that was one of the things that I think.
And we all want the same things. We want to take care of our children. We want to be healthy. We want love. We want respect. We want to express our talents and have them taken seriously. Very similar. When I do a CEO's chart or a janitor's chart, it's the same. The questions are the same.
Yes, it's all human. And, you know, you know, closing this out with Marilyn, you know, she just wanted to be loved like all of us. And so I just want to say thank you so much for spending.
Oh, thank you. This has been just amazing. I feel like we've had a dinner. We had time to talk.
We sure did.
And get into the real questions of life that matter.
Yeah.
You know, these questions matter, and how we treat other people matters. So thank you for inviting me on your wonderful show.
Thank you. And a wonderful time to celebrate not only the life and the death, but also the legacy of Marilyn Monroe. So thank you, Susan Miller. Her website is Astrology Zone. Download her app. She is very not only thoughtful, but also she does a lot of research. A lot of work goes into each and every month that she writes in the year ahead. So we certainly have a lot to look forward to over the next few years. So let's come together.
Thank you. Yes, 222 is one of my favorites. That's what I call it, 222, but it's really 2022. But yeah, no, it's a romantic year.
Ooh.
And music and art and food and fashion and, you know, literature and movies. And no, it'll be fun. It will be fun because all of us are going through this pandemic together, and the art that's produced, everyone can relate to. It's the first time in my life that I've ever seen anything like this. I talk to my editors in Japan, and they're feeling the same thing I am. And, you know, so
Well, I love that, because Hollywood, you look at the history of Hollywood, and it was really built on that art lovers kind of buildup of getting artists into the community. It wasn't always that way. So I'm looking forward to 222, as you like to say. So we'll have you back again. Thank you so much, Susan Miller.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.